We start with the Surah Al-Fatiha, please. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الصلاة والسلام على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. You're really far away. I mean, it's crazy. Come on. I'm sure you can manage to come a bit further down. It's just too far away. I don't bite. And I don't mind kids. That's what this is for. Thank you. Okay. So we're going to look at Surah Al-Qamar today. And because we're also entering in the last third of the month of Ramadan, which is literally what Ramadan is all about, I'm going to talk a little bit about Surah Al-Qadr. And inshallah then tomorrow we will, because tomorrow is the Battle of Badr. We'll talk about a little bit of that, but also what we're going to do on Qadr. Just so you know, on the 19th night, which is the 18th day as such, we will do the amals with all the children together. So any explanations will be today and tomorrow, and then 19th we'll be reciting the amals, and we'll talk a little bit about Imam Ali. But as for today, let's go back to Surah Al-Qamar. You know it's Surah number 54. You know it's just the moon. You know it's got 55 ayat, and you know it's a Makki surah. Like I said, for every single surah, you should be able to know, hopefully, inshallah by next year, you should be able to know its key concepts. Somebody said a surah, you know what it's about. Qamar, now you know that the name comes from the splitting of the moon. You know it talks about the communities that did not listen to divine guidance and therefore were subsequently destroyed, or subsequently punishment was sent on them. But 4 times Allah says, وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ. Is there anyone who will put in a little bit of effort into understanding the Quran? It will make it for you to internalize. So today we're going to look at the last 3 sections. I'll try and finish it off today. So you've got ayah 41 and 42, which is in essence section 6. You've been sent the sheet on your on the Telegram group. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَلَقَدْ جَاءَ آلَ فِرْعَوْنَ. And indeed we sent, or came, not sent, came to Al Fir'aun, the people of Fir'aun, nudhur, warnings came. Now there were 9 different warnings, or 9 different signs that came to him. You all know about the snake, or the staff that became a snake. You all know about the hand that he had to put it under his armpit, take it out, and suddenly it was lighted. Then they also had the drought. Then they had hailstones. Then they had locusts. Then they had beetles. I'll put it on your sheet, by the way. Then they had frogs. Then they had the river that turned into blood. And then they had a plague on livestock. And every single time, Fir'aun would say, okay, take your people. Take the Bani Israel. But every time the plague was over, he forgot. So Allah here is saying, وَلَقَدْ جَاءَ came to Ali Fir'aun nudhur, all these different warnings and signs. كَذَّبُوا بِآيَاتِنَا. He belied, or he ignored. He didn't put any truth in these signs. كُلِّيَا, all of them. فَأَخَذْنَاهُمْ. So we took him, or we grabbed him. أَخَذَ عَزِيزٍ مُقْتَدِرٍ. With a grabbing of authority. Now, there's only these 2 lines. Everybody knows, you all know, you've gone through history, you know that Fir'aun was drowned, right? You all know that he pursued the Bani Israel. So he's going after them. You can imagine Bani Israel and Musa. So there's Fir'aun's army behind, and then they've got the Red Sea in front of them. And they're sort of thinking, oh my goodness, we've got nowhere to go. But there's a beautiful ayah, 2662, right? You can look it up. And if you're ever stuck like that, when you don't know whether you can go back or in front, and you're actually stuck, that ayah of Quran is really good, which is inni, or inna rabbi ma'ya, or inna ma'ya rabbi sayahdeen, sorry. Inna ma'ya rabbi sayahdeen. And they told him, what is going on? What are we going to do? And he just said, inna ma'ya rabbi sayahdeen. My Rabb is with me. Definitely we will be guided. So that's an ayah that you might want to keep at the back of your minds. He was drowned. There's also a wonderful hadith about a woman who was washing her clothes on the Red Sea. Now her son had been killed by Fir'aun. And you know, Fir'aun just killed people just for the heck of it. She always raised her hands, and whenever she came to wash her clothes at the river, she would say, Ya Allah, one day I want to see his body floating here at the river. This is from Imam Baqir, okay? And she was washing her clothes that day at the river, and guess what she sees? His body floating in the river. And there's a wonderful saying which says that the one who has no one, who's got only God, beware of them, because God will assist them. Now, I'm not saying Fir'aun was killed because of her, but that is one of the du'as that was there. There is another hadith that says, God is with the brokenhearted, or your Rabb is with the brokenhearted. So be very careful whose heart you break, because you don't know that if God is with that brokenhearted person, can you imagine who you are standing up against? Very often we say things, we do things, really questionable. And we don't understand how far they will go. So I'm just trying to bring that to you whenever you see this. Okay, next section, section 7, 43 to 53. And this is talking about the Day of Judgment. Stay with me. أَكَفَّارُكُمْ خَيْرٌ مِّنْ أَوْلِيَاءِكُمْ. Are those who cover the truth better than these? That is, this is now addressing the Makkans. أَمْ لَكُمْ بَرَاءَةٌ فِي الزُّبُرِ. Or did you suddenly get an exemption? Bara'a means an exemption. Did you get an exemption, an escape letter from the scriptures? Were you told that nothing's going to affect you? أَمْ يَقُولُونَ نَحْنُ جَمِيعٌ مُنْتَصِرٌ. Or do they say that we will just get together and help each other? After all, we're one group. These are questions that are asked to them. سَيُهْزَمُ الْجَمْعُ وَيُوَلُّونَ الدُّبُرِ. And Allah is saying soon they will get together, but you will see that they will, dubur means they will turn back. And this is alluding to the Battle of Badr. The Battle of Badr had not happened. Inshallah, we'll talk about it tomorrow and you'll see exactly what happened. بَلِ السَّاعَةُ مَوْئِدُهُمْ وَالسَّاعَةُ أَدْهَى وَأُمَرْ. And Allah is saying the accountability is so near and it'll be so difficult if you're not prepared for it. You can just imagine for a minute if you and I said something, didn't even think twice about it, because that's something that we do. And then suddenly on the Day of Judgment, you and I are told, you remember what you said? And you say, yeah, but I didn't mean it. I just said it. Or did you remember what you heard? I just heard it. And the reason why it's so grievous and hard and difficult is because I didn't think too much of it when I did it. Okay? All right. إِنَّ الْمُجْرِمِينَ فِي ضَلَالٍ وَسُعُرٍ. Those who are guilty will be in error and they will be crazy. Su'ur is mad, crazy. They didn't understand what they did because they didn't take account of what they were doing. يَوْمَ يَسْبَحُونَ فِي النَّارِ. Yasbahuna is to hold somebody down. Their heads will be held down in the fire. Ala wujuhim, that is their faces. Dhuku massa sakar. So taste the fire. Why? Because you inadvertently or advertently or purposely or not purposely, you hurt people, you caused fire within them. It's just a reflection of what you and I did. So this is actually a sort of a sign to say, grow up, start looking at what you've done and ask for forgiveness. Inna kulla shayin khalaqnahu bi qadr. We've created everything according to a measure. So everything is decreed. For every action, there is a set reaction. وَمَا أَمْرُنَا إِلَّا وَاحِدَةٌ كَلَمْحٍ بِالْبَصَرِ. And he says, our command is one. We don't change our ways. And everything just happens. It's just like, if I send a WhatsApp message today, it just gets to another country now. Or you can understand it now. What we do, it comes back. It's exactly the same thing, okay? Unless we sort ourselves out. وَلَقَدْ أَهْلَكْنَا أَشْيَاءَكُمْ. And we destroyed people like you. فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ. Put a little bit of effort in understanding the past. The reason why Quran talks a lot about the past is to give you and me lessons. Okay? Sometimes they say, what's the point of history? Point of history is for me to know that history repeats itself. Okay. وَكُلُّ شَيْءٍ فَعَلُوهُ فِي الزُّبُرِ. Everything is recorded. We read Surah Yasin all the time. إِنَّا نَحْنُ نُحْيِي الْمَوْتَى وَنَكْتُبُ مَا قَدَّمُوا وآثارهم. We write down what you do and what's left behind. In other words, the effects of what you've done. وكل صغير وكبير مستتر. This is quite scary. Every small thing and every big thing is documented line by line. Mustatir, line by line. It's like nothing is left out. My intention, my action, everything is written down as a whole. Now the last section, which I absolutely adore. So Ayatollah Amuli was asked, oh, give us the address of Imam Mahdi. We're looking for him. And all he said was 5455. And this is where we are. And they said, how so? And he said, well, you will find him in every place where there's truth and righteousness. You will not find him anywhere where there's deception and fraud. And anywhere there is a remembrance of Allah, you will find him. He'll be there. So let's look at it. Innal muttaqina fi jannati wa nahar. I love this ayah, incidentally. When you read ayat of Quran that you love, smile. God Almighty, you're not the only people fasting. There's a whole world of people who are fasting. There are those who are working in the sun. There are those who don't have enough food. I was watching something about somebody asking fiqh questions. And there was young man from Somalia who asked a question. And honestly, it makes you cry because he said, is my fast valid if I don't have enough money to have sehri and iftar? And I saw this bit about the sheikh actually crying, okay? So you're not the only ones fasting. My God, we've got so much. Right? So here, innal muttaqina, those who are God conscious, so you're always aware of Allah, will be in these gardens. And it does, I know your translation says rivers. It's not rivers, it doesn't say anhar. It says nahar, which means a special river. Now, river, all right, may signify all different things. But in life, it signifies movement. It signifies you doing something. Okay, in Jannah there are these rivers, and we talk about them all our lives. I remember talking to the young children, and I said the rivers are milk and honey, and they said, yuck, we don't want to go to Jannah. Don't like milk and honey. And these are the last two things we want being given to us. So it's different. It's not the way children see it. Nahar is something flowing. So you and I need to be dynamic, need to be moving to be able to get this. And then he says, fi maq'adi sidkin. Maq'ad is a place where you want to stay for a long time. It's not something where you want to get up from. It's a place of permanence. So he says this will be a place of permanence, sidkin, truthful, in the Maliki Muqtadir, with a king who has power over everything. By extension, it means you will be in a place where you will get whatever you want, when you want, how you want. It's phenomenal. So the surah ends like that. So I'll go over it again. 8 sections. First, splitting of the moon and Qiyamah. Second, Nuh. Third, Hud. Fourth, Saleh. Fifth, Lut. Sixth, oh my goodness, Musa and Fir'aun. You're supposed to get up. Seventh is accountability. And 8th is Jannah. And so when you read the surah, you say, I want to be part of 54 and 55. That's all you say. I want to be there. 54, 55. That's where I want to be. And that can't be difficult to remember. I told you, make them passcodes. All right, people know them. But pick on an ayah. When you have your 4-digit passcodes, pick an ayah for Quran and change that. As soon as you know it, then change it to something you know. 2662. I don't know. Whatever you want. And it really does make a difference. I don't think anybody here is going to hack your phones, okay? So that sort of comes from the end of Surah Al-Qamar. What I'd like to do today is look at Surah Al-Qadr. So if you've got your Qurans with you, and you all know Surah Al-Qadr, you don't even have to look at your Qurans. So we're going to go on to line by line. And what I suggest you do is it is recommended on Laylatul Qadr to read Surah Al-Qadr 1,000 times. Now you cannot recite it 1,000 times on Laylatul Qadr. It's quite difficult with children on your own. I would start now. It doesn't matter, 10, 100, whatever you can. But to be able to understand it is just something else. Okay, so let's start off with looking at Surah Al-Qadr, which hopefully you will recite. But I'm going to do a little bit of a preamble about the month of Ramadan. Okay. So when you look at the month of Ramadan, we find it hard, and we think that it's all about hunger and thirst. But in essence, the merits of Ramadan is in, just like medicine. If medicine is bitter, that is not the merit of the medicine. The merit of the medicine is to cure you. And that's what Ramadan does to you. I'll add little bits. I'm just going one bit at a time. At the time of iftar, the Prophet said, whatever you pray for is never refused at the time of iftar. Now, normally we're so busy laying it out and sorting it out, we forget. Or we might say, Allahumma laka sumna wa ala rizkika aftarna fataqabbal minna innaka anta as-samiul alim. You do that, right? Oh, you do that as a matter of course. And then you hold your date in your hand. I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about me. You hold your date in your hand and you go, Ya wasi al-maghfira ighfirli. And that's it. Khalas. Well, pause. Maybe you pray first. Maybe you don't. Doesn't really matter, whatever you do. But pause. Ask for your du'as. Get your children to pause. And when you say, Ya wasi al-maghfira ighfirli, that is the greatest dua, or the one who forgives extensively. Forgive me. And if for a moment you did that, my God, you'd have tears in your eyes. Let me give you an example of what Ramadan teaches you. It teaches you to let go. Okay, and that's I'm coming to Laylatul Qadr on that basis. See, often we find it hard to let go, whether it's a hurt or a person or anything. It's really, really hard to let go. So the example given by some of the scholars is about a monkey. So in some places in South America, for example, if they want to catch monkeys, because monkeys are a bit of a nuisance, they take a coconut shell and they fill the coconut shell with peanuts. And they have a hole that's just enough for the monkey to put his hand in or her hand in. When they put their hand in, they grab the peanuts. When you do a fist, you can't take your hand out. You try as much as you can, you can't take your hand out. And they catch all their monkeys like that because the monkeys don't want to let go of the peanuts. If the monkeys let go of the peanuts, quite easily take your hands out. And Laylatul Qadr is actually just sitting down and thinking, what can't I let go? Which hurt, which person, what addiction, whatever it is, jealousy, hatred, anger, resentment, whatever it is. Why am I holding on to it? Because that's why I'm getting caught and it's not letting me out. So keep that in mind when I talk about it. Fasting, he says, in Hadith Qudsi, he says, it's for me and I will reward it. I'm only going bits and pieces. I'm building up to Laylatul Qadr. So now there's 3 types of fasting, or 3 aspects of fasting. You have the outer fast, you have the inner fast, and you have the fast of the heart. So the outer fast is easy. No eating, no drinking, no all the rest of it, whatever you're not allowed to do. Okay. The inner fast is where you're holding yourself up from shouting, screaming, all the rest of it. Wonderful story we tell the children about the Prophet in the month of Ramadan, passing by, walking from Zohar Salah, he was walking home. And on the way, there is this voice coming from this woman's house where she's shouting at the lady who works for her, whether it was her slave or whatever it was. And he goes home and he sends her lunch. And she runs to his house and she says, why are you sending me lunch? You're the one who told us to fast, and now you're sending me lunch. And he said, what is the point of fasting if you're going to eat a bit of our heart? So that's your inner fasting. It's quite difficult. I mean, if you've got 5 children like I have, maybe you have 3, 4, can you imagine not having to shout at them? You really have to keep it down. Not getting angry, not shouting, not... All those things are part of the inner fast. They break. If you had it... Let me take the fiqh masala. I don't like touching on fiqh because I'm no scholar. But if you had a... intention. Say you were fasting and then you thought, I'm really hungry, I want to break my fast. Your fast is broken. It's gone. The very fact that you intended to break it. If you thought this fast is difficult, I'm only fasting because I have to, not if you thought that your intention wasn't to break it, but this is difficult, that's something different. Or if you said, I'm really hungry today, that's different. But if in your mind you made an intention that I'm going to break it, but you didn't, your fast is already broken. So that's your inner fast. It's not just nothing. You've got to think about your insides. Then you have the heart fast. The heart is all about how you serve other people. So one of the manifestations of a fast is creating an empathy inside you and me, that when you and I hear of somebody who's hungry or thirsty or people who don't have anything or orphans, then immediately the inner fast will do that to me. Imam Ali says, nourishment of the body is food, Nourishment of the soul is feeding somebody else. That's why we looked at the sermon of the Prophet and he said, if you were to even feed one person who's fasting, you would get freedom from the fire. Now, it's not like just sending a plate to somebody next door and saying, you know what, that's what it is. That's not what it's about. It's actually thinking through these things and saying, do I have the empathy to do it? Okay, now back to your Surah Al-Qadr. Are you good with that now? Okay. We're going to go bit by bit, and we're going to go through each thing. So, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Inna, indeed we. Why we? We, because the totality of the spiritual world is engaged in this. It's not only divinity, it's not only an angel. Inna, the totality of the spiritual world. What are they engaged in? Anzalnahu. Sent it down. Now, in Arabic, if you say nazzala with a shadda, it means over time. Nazala is all at once. So if I read this now, indeed we, the totality of the spiritual world, anzalnahu, sent it down all at once, fi, in Laylatul Qadr, on the night of Qadr. Okay, what did he send down? Well, we all know. We've read Surah Al-Baqarah. We did the ayat of Surah Al-Baqarah where it says this Quran was revealed in Shahr Ramadan. So we know it is the Quran. So it was sent down all at once. Where was it sent down from? These are all questions we have to ask. Remember Surah Muhammad, Allah says, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ أَمَّا عَلَىٰ قُلُوبٍ أَقْفَالُهَا. Why don't you do tadabbur, ponder over the Quran? Dabur is back. Why don't you 360 look at the Quran? Is it because you've got locks on your heart? So where did it come from? So you and I know that it started off on the seventh heaven in a place called Lawh Mahfuz. How do I know that? Surah Al-Buruj. Look at Surah Al-Buruj, the last two ayat. You got your phones on you? Or you got your Surah Al-Buruj on you? Look it up. And if you want to know what Surah Al-Buruj is, by now you should know all these surahs as to what numbers they are. I'm hoping. Hopefully you're looking at 85. Okay. So Surah Al-Buruj, if you look at the last two, Bal huwa Qur'anum Majid. Indeed, it is a glorious Quran. Fi lawhim mahfuz. It's in a guarded tablet. Okay. You know, in the Quran we have Surah Al-Baqarah. It says, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابِ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. ذَلِكَ in Arabic is that. Hada is this, although the translation is this. This book, there is no doubt in it. When Surah Al-Baqarah was there, the whole Quran wasn't revealed, was it? Dhalika is that book which is in Lawh Mahfuz. It is in a guarded tablet. One day we'll talk about these heavens. Anyway, so seventh heaven, then it comes down to the first heaven in what is called Baytul Ma'mur. And then from there on, it comes down to the heart of the Prophet. I'll ask you to go to Surah Al-Shu'ara. Do you know what Surah Al-Shu'ara is? See if you can find it. So on your phones, if you look up Surah Al-Shu'ara, you will see it. Hopefully you're looking at Surah number 26. And you're looking at ayah 192, I think. Let's check. I hope I'm right. Okay. So 192. وَإِنَّهُ لَتَنزِيلُ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. This is a revelation from the Rabb of the worlds. نَزَلَ بِهِ الرُّوحُ الْأَمِينَ. It was brought down by Jibreel. Where? عَلَى قَلْبِكَ. On your heart, O Prophet. لِتَكُونَ مِنَ الْمُنذِرِينَ. So that you may warn بِلِسَانٍ عَرَبِيٍّ مُبِينٍ. In a plain Arabic language. You got that? So, when you think about this book coming down, أَنزَلْنَاهُ, you're thinking seventh heaven, and then you're thinking first heaven, and then you're thinking heart of the Prophet. All at once, on Laylatul Qadr. Qadr has so many different meanings. I mean, I could just go on and on about them. You know, you've got things that say whether it is power. I think somewhere in your translation it says power. Somewhere it says Qadr can also mean your status. It can mean all sorts of things. But inshallah, we'll go in that a bit later. And then he says, وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا لَيْلَةُ الْقَدْرِ. And what will make you understand what the night of Qadr is? So there's an emphasis here that tells me that he really wants to specify this. He really wants to emphasize on Laylatul Qadr. And then I think, if he's put so much emphasis on the night of Qadr, on the night on which the Quran is revealed, can you imagine what the Quran must be like? Well, it's supposed to be something phenomenal. Anyway, so what happens on this night? Let's see. Laylatul Qadr, the night of Qadr. Khayrum, it is better, min alfi shahr, than 1,000 months. My goodness. Now, that's metaphorical. 1,000 months is 83 years and 4 months, which is about a lifetime. A useful lifetime, okay? Anybody over 83, don't get upset. I hope you live for over 100, 200 years, okay? But that's sort of a useful life. So he's saying Laylatul Qadr is better than a whole lifetime. So I'm thinking, well, why are you saying it's better than a lifetime? What happens on this night? What is it that makes such a difference? So he says, the first thing, tanazzalul malaika. The tanazzala is to come down continuously. So he says, continuously these angels come down on this night. Wa ruh. Now ruh could be ruh al-amin, which is Jibreel. Ruh can be anything that is associated with Allah. So it could be a higher authority that authorizes all the angels. It could be something that has a speck of divinity. So he says these angels and this ruh come down continuously, fiha, in it, bi'idhni rabbihim, with the permission of their Rabb, min kulli amr, with every affair. So now 2 questions. When is Laylatul Qadr? Question number 1. Number 2, who do they come down to, these angels? Where do they come? So first, when is Laylatul Qadr? So the Prophet said, it is any one of the 10 nights in the last 10 nights of the month of Ramadan. And he said odd nights, right? Then we go to the other ahadith of the Prophet and Imam Ali and the Masumin. And all of them tell us that there are 3 particular nights, 19, 21 and 23rd. There are some groups of Muslims who actually think the 27th is Laylatul Qadr. But let's look at our ahadith say 19, 21, 23. In fact, if you put all the ahadith together, our scholars tell us all 3 are just as important. So on the 19th, your budget is set. So I would call it paper, okay? So you take your paper. On the 21st, there is qada, it is consolidated. That means it is distributed. And on the 23rd, it is stamped. It's called Ibram. It's stamped, so I would call it paper, stone, seal, if you can remember that. So 19th, you would write things down. You've got a little bit of time to change it up to the 21st. 21st, you sort of now literally set it in stone. 21st to 23rd, you've still got some time to etch out the stuff and put some more in. And 23rd, it's stamped. Why do we say 23rd? 2 hadiths. Hadith Juhni and the hadith of Imam Ali about rain. So hadith Juhni talks about a man called Juhni, who had to come to, if he wanted to come to Masjid al-Nabi in Medina, he would have to travel with all his animals, his whole family, everything. And it was difficult for him. So one Ramadan he comes on Laylatul Qadr, and he asks the Prophet, Ya Rasulullah, give me one day in the year when I should come. Give me one day when I should come here and I can sit and, I can do my ibadah, and the most important day of the year. And the Prophet whispered something in his ear. Didn't tell everyone, whispered in his ear. And it's recorded that every year he came on the 23rd of Ramadan. Imam Ali says that the Prophet had a dream that it would rain on Laylatul Qadr. And that year it only rained on the 23rd. So I'm just giving you 2 of many ahadith. So 23rd is sort of, in our minds, it's put in that this is the Laylatul Qadr as such. Okay. So where do these angels come? There's so many angels, they're like pebbles. In fact, angels have to ask permission to come and see those who are Ahlul Quran, like you and me. And we sort of think, really? That's what they do. But where do they come? Well, we just talked about the Quran coming down to the heart of the Prophet. We also know in Surah Al-Hashr, لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله. If this Quran was revealed on a mountain, it would just explode into tiny bits, right? But here we're told that this came down on the heart of the Prophet. So the heart that it comes down on has to be equivalent to the heart of the Prophet, right? And the only one on earth that you can think of is Imam Zamana Ajjalallahu Farajah. Salli ala Muhammad وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Imam Baqir says, if you want anybody to understand the presence of the Hujjah in this world, talk to them about Surah Al-Qadr. Ask them, where do these angels come down? Okay, now what happens here? He says, Salam hiya hatta matlayl fajr. It is utter peace. Utter peace until morning. Why utter peace? What actually happens? What is there? You see, it is a night of being limitless. There are no limits. The limit is set by you and me. I don't know whether you've read a book, The Dark Fields. Have you read it? Okay, so The Dark Fields is by Alan Glynn. And if you've watched, there's a movie, and I think there's also a box set. It's called Limitless. Have you heard about Limitless? Oh, come on. Oh, obviously you don't watch TV, only I do. Okay. So in Limitless, you have this particular EZ or ZE drug that this person eats. And when he takes this drug, he can think like a computer. You know, it's like Google on wheels, okay? So it's just there. He's got everything. He can think fast. He can do things fast. And the drug is called Limitless. So the series is called Limitless, I think. So if you replace Limitless with divine energy, that's what you get on Laylatul Qadr. Because you have this speck of divinity that meets with the earth. And it actually explodes. And I cannot emphasize the importance of Laylatul Qadr. Sayyidah Fatima used to make sure that her children would sleep early, that they would have very light food on Laylatul Qadr, so they could sit up with her, and understand what Laylatul Qadr was about. As a child, I remember my father used to, the way he used to tell us there's one moment when you will see the star that is only shining for you. I mean, that was enough for us to keep awake and look at, and we always saw this star. I mean, you could tell me what you like, but we definitely saw this star. But he would make us write down, and that's what I suggest you do from now. Write down, take a piece of paper, fold it into 4. Physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Write down your aspirations, and it doesn't matter. It's your aspirations. Physically, you want to be fit. Physically, you don't want to be, you don't want to get to my age and say, well, my knees are hurting and my head is hurting and my back is hurting. You don't want that. You want to be able to be independent, inverted brackets. Ask anybody who's old and they'll tell you, I wish we could have thought about our physical health. You want to look cute. Nobody said you had to wear these pajamas with, I don't know, whatever, okay? You want to keep all that in mind. You want to be able to look after yourself. Physically, it's really important, and that starts with Laylatul Qadr. How will you change your diet? How will you change your way of living? How will you change your exercise levels? What will you do? Mentally, you want to be activated. You just don't want all the time twinkle, twinkle, little star, okay? You want to move up from there. You want to activate your thinking. Whether you have an hour in a day that you set aside, or when the children have gone to sleep, you will spend half an hour or an hour thinking about things. It's entirely up to you. But mentally, you've got to be activated. Look at the Quran. See what you can do. It doesn't have to be the Quran. It could be absolutely anything you want to do, but Quran is part of it. Emotionally, you got to sit down and think, I need to take out this resentment from my heart. This particular person, I just don't like. Well, let's start by resolving it in our head. How are we going to resolve it? I'm not saying it's going to go straight away. It's never going to happen like that. But how are you going to do it? What you going to do? Will you help to resolve it? We have a whole batch of du'as that we call go-to du'as. Fatim's looking at me. We'll try and get her to put it on your Telegram group. And they're small du'as, and I'll go over them at some point with you if I get time. But it's when you're stuck, when you think there's no way out, when nobody understands how you feel. Where do you go? Do you sit on your musalla? And if you sit on your musalla, what do you do? Sometimes, when you have go-to du'as, and we've made them short, sometimes when people say, do an amal, I mean, you're not going to do 3.5 hours amal Umm Dawood if your heart is hurting. I remember when my mother had cancer. My mother was one of those people who fasted Rajab, Shaban, Ramadan. My mother was one of those people who did her nafilah without, it was not even thinking. For her, and salah and Quran and namaz and fasting was just part of her life. But when she got ill, when she had cancer, she couldn't even read the bare minimum. You know, like she would do her wajibat, and if you told her, read this dua, she'd tell me, I can't. I just can't. And that was an inspiration for go-to duas. Because you saw that when people were hurt and they were in pain, they needed something short and they needed something to hold on to. Because faith gives you hope, but not these long things. You imagine somebody tell you, read iftitah, and you think, really? I can barely think. So that my inspiration for go to du'as was my mom. And I mean, she was just somebody absolutely phenomenal. So hopefully you will get them and you will look at them. And in your emotional bit, which is emotional stroke spiritual, you will put down these du'as. Because nobody's going to understand you. Your children, your spouse, your brothers, your sisters, your parents, what is deep in there, only you're going to understand, and only him. That's why I tell you that the Asma al-Husna, the ism to call out to is Ya Ra'uf. Ra'uf is somebody who understands. Okay? So this Laylatul Qadr, so you've made your physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. Amend it. You still got a few days to go. And then make sure you've got a timetable. We used to give them out before. So you start off with Salatul Maghrib, right? Whatever time that is, 8:15, 8:20, whatever it's going to be on Laylatul Qadr. And then you take your Salatul Fajr, 4 o'clock maybe. Maybe it'll be a bit earlier, 3:45. So say, for example, for argument's sake, it's 8:15 to 3:45. So I would say 8:15 to 9 o'clock, you're probably having iftar and tidying up. Maybe you need a bit more time. Then you've got 9 o'clock till about 3 o'clock. You haven't got much time. You've got about 6 hours. What are you going to do in those 6 hours? Write it all down. It's not about pare and pare and pare and pare. It isn't. Read by all means. But make sure you understand what you're reading. Okay, maybe you want to spend an hour reading because it makes you feel good. From childhood, we've been conditioned into reading. Do that. But when you come to something like putting the Quran on your head and reciting the names of the Masumin, for God's sakes, let's know who these Masumin were. I'm hoping tomorrow you will bring your dua books, you know, the books that you use on Laylatul Qadr, so we can write about each of the Masumin. So when you look at them and you say, you know, bi Aliyin, bi Muhammadin, bi Fatima, bi Hassanin, you will know what you're thinking through, what's going on in your head. So all these things need to be planned from now. You can't plan at the end of the day. It just doesn't happen like that. What you're going to eat, how you're going to move yourself towards it. And like I said, the most important is the 23rd. So 19th, 21st, and 23rd. So inshallah, we will look at all these tomorrow after we've talked about the Battle of Badr. But I'd like to just today bring your attention to the dua that the Prophet recited on the Battle of Badr. Basically because that is the dua that you start reciting tonight. Okay, so you've got it on your Telegram group. It's been sent to you. So if you have a look, you'll see it. And I'll just go over it very, very quickly. If you've got it, just look at it and go over it with me. So he says, Allahumma anta thiqati fi kulli karb. You are my trust in every distress. And you know what? If you don't understand it, you don't want to read the Arabic, at least think through it in English or in the language you're speaking in. Arabic is beautiful because these are the words of the Prophet, so they're good to use. وَأَنْتَ رَجَائِي فِي كُلِّ شِدَّةٍ. You are my hope in every difficulty. وَأَنْتَ لِي فِي كُلِّ أَمْرٍ نَزَلَ بِي ثِقَةٍ. And you are for me in every matter that comes down to me a support. You can imagine the Prophet. It's the midst of the battle. He can see 1,000 soldiers here, and here there's only 313. Some say 10,000. Just imagine how difficult it was. We'll talk about it tomorrow. And then he says, فَكَمْ مِنْ كَرْبٍ بِضَعْفِ فِيهِ الْفُعَادُ وَتَقَلَّ فِيهِ الْهِيلَةِ. And he says, how many are there those sorrows that weaken the hearts, the lack of solutions, where the near ones actually leave you and the enemies actually laugh on you. And I love it when he says that, Ya Allah, I complain. He says, وَشَكَوْتَهُ إِلَيْكَ. I complain only to you. If you go to Surah Yusuf, Prophet Ayub, he tells Allah that he tells his sons, I only complain to Allah about my grief and my sorrow. It's the same thing coming along. And then he says, I leave it to you and I complain about it to you. Who else is there besides you? There is nobody else besides you. Make it easy. take this that is happening to me away from me. You are enough for me. You're the one who gives me all the bounties. وَلِيَ كُلِّ نِعْمَةٍ وَصَاحِبَ كُلِّ حَاجَةٍ. You're the one who will answer all my du'as. And then you tell him that for you, فَلَكَ الْحَمْدُ كَثِيرًا. For you there is loads and loads of hamd. So that tells me that in my du'as, besides my salawat, I could do lots of hamd, lots of shukr. Right? I hope you read this. You've got it with you. There is also and this was answered by Surah Al-Anfal, Ayah 9. You probably all have it somewhere. You can look at it. Up to you. 8, 9. Have you got it there? Have a look. So straight after he does this dua, Allah answers by saying, إِسْتَسْتَغِيثُونَ رَبَّكُمْ. When you pleaded to your Rabb, فَاسْتَجَابَ لَكُمْ, He answered you, أَنِّي مُمَدِّكُمْ بِأَلْفٍ مِّنَ الْمَلَائِكَةِ مُرْدِفِينَ. He answered by sending you 1,000 angels, row after row after row. It is said you could do this amal as well from tonight, and you could do these amals continuously for 11 nights until the end of Ramadan. So what you do is you have a salawat, you recite this ayah 14 times, and then a salawat, and ask for your hajat. It can't hurt you. You learn an ayah of Quran, and who knows? He will send you down those angels. It's phenomenal. And on Laylatul Qadr, you might even see them. You never know. Okay, so tomorrow, inshallah, we will do a little bit more on Laylatul Qadr, and we will look at the Battle of Badr. We will go over this dua again. Hopefully you will have it printed out or with you in large writing, and we'll go over each Arabic word. But today let's end with Surah Al-Fatiha and the dua for protection. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. صدق الله العظيم. Let's ask Allah to give the thawab to all the marhumin, especially those of your family. Pray for those who are ill and those who are in trouble. لي خمسة أطفي بها حر الوباء العاتمة المصطفى والمرتضى وأبناهما والفاطمة. It's time for ziyarah, please.